The apartment was a complete mess, a chaotic whirlwind of disarray. Clothes were strewn across the floor, drawers were left hanging open, and overturned furniture painted a picture of frantic haste and panic. Papers and photographs lay scattered, like fallen leaves disturbed by a sudden gust of wind, adding to the sense of disorder. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and a lingering sense of fear that seemed to permeate every corner.
In the center of the chaos stood Emily, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with terror, reflecting the turmoil around her. She clutched her phone, its blue light illuminating her face, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through messages, seeking some form of reassurance. Each notification sent a fresh wave of fear coursing through her, tightening its grip around her chest, making it hard to breathe. She glanced at the door, her heart pounding in her ears, every sound amplifying her anxiety. Each creak and groan of the old building sounded like approaching footsteps, heightening her sense of dread. Every shadow seemed to writhe and twist, taking on sinister shapes in the darkness, playing tricks on her mind. She was alone, and the feeling of dread was suffocating, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, making it hard to think clearly. She had to get out, find somewhere safe. But where? Who could she trust in this moment of crisis? She was caught in a web of fear, and there seemed to be no escape, no way out of this nightmare.
Emily's breath came in short, shallow gasps, each one a struggle against the suffocating fear. She pressed her back against the wall, her body trembling uncontrollably, as if the very air around her was charged with dread. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a hiding place, anything to offer a moment of respite from the overwhelming terror that threatened to consume her. Every corner seemed to hold a new threat, every shadow a lurking danger. Time seemed to warp and distort, stretching out each agonizing second into an eternity of fear and uncertainty.
The silence of the apartment was broken only by the frantic thumping of her own heart, a sound that seemed to echo through the empty rooms. A relentless rhythm of fear echoing in her ears, growing louder with each passing moment. She felt utterly alone, isolated in her terror, as if the walls themselves were closing in on her. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation, grasping for a logical explanation, but finding none. But fear had a way of twisting logic, of amplifying every shadow and magnifying every creak into a threat, making the familiar seem foreign and menacing. Emily closed her eyes, trying to regain some semblance of control, to steady her racing heart and calm her frantic thoughts. She needed to think clearly, to find a way out of this nightmare, to reclaim her sense of safety and peace. But the fear was insidious, seeping into her thoughts, whispering doubts and amplifying her terror, making every decision feel fraught with danger.
The messages on her phone glowed ominously, each one a chilling reminder of the danger she was in. They seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, casting a sinister light on her face. They were cryptic, filled with veiled threats and warnings. Each message was more disturbing than the last, a puzzle of fear she couldn't solve. The sender knew her routines, her fears. It was as if they were always watching, always one step ahead.
"I'm closer than you think." The words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of her vulnerability.
The words seemed to jump out from the screen, burning themselves into her mind. She couldn't escape their haunting presence. She could almost feel the sender's presence, a suffocating weight pressing down on her. It was as if the walls were closing in.
There's nowhere to run. The message was clear, and it filled her with a sense of hopelessness.
The words were like ice water, sending a shiver down her spine. She felt paralyzed by fear, unable to move her chest. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow a potential threat. She scrolled through the messages, each one more unsettling than the last. Her hands trembled as she read, the fear growing with each word. They were a chilling chronicle of her stalker's obsession, a digital trail of fear leading directly to her. She felt trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She felt a cold dread creep up her spine. These weren't empty threats. The danger was real, and it was closing in on her. There was a chilling intent behind the words, a palpable sense of danger that sent a wave of nausea through her. She knew she had to act fast. She had to escape. But where could she go? Every option seemed fraught with peril, every path a potential trap.
"You're being paranoid," Sarah had scoffed, her voice laced with amusement.
They were at their usual cafe, the familiar aroma of coffee beans and chatter a stark contrast to the chilling premonition that had settled over Emily. Emily had tried to explain the feeling of being watched, the strange occurrences, the unsettling feeling that something was amiss. But her words seemed to fall flat, dismissed as anxieties, nothing more than an overactive imagination.
"Just be careful," Sarah had said finally, her tone laced with a hint of concern.
But even her words seemed laced with doubt, as if she too didn't believe the gravity of the situation. Now, as Emily huddled in her darkened apartment, the memory of Sarah's dismissal stung with fresh pain. She had brushed off Emily's fears, and now, Emily was living a nightmare.
Her gaze fell on a small white envelope propped against a picture frame on her bedside table. It hadn't been there before. Her breath hitched in her throat, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. With trembling fingers, she reached for the envelope, her heart pounding in her chest. It was unsealed, her name scrawled across the front in a handwriting that sent chills down her spine. It was unfamiliar, yet it sparked a primal fear within her. Inside, a single photograph lay nestled against a sheet of plain white paper. Her blood ran cold as she recognized the image, a picture of her, asleep in her own bed, taken just hours ago. Panic seized her. This wasn't a game anymore. Whoever was behind this was no longer content with just watching, with sending cryptic messages. They had been here in her apartment, watching her while she slept. The camera panned slowly, moving with a chilling purposefulness toward her building, stopping at her window. Her breath caught in her throat, a cold dread settling in the pit of her stomach. Then, the camera angle shifted, revealing the face of the person holding the phone. It was a face she knew, a face that sent a wave of shock and betrayal washing over her. Sarah, her friend, her confidant, stood outside her window, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. The image froze on Sarah's face, the smirk widening into a chilling grin. Emily stared at the phone, her mind reeling. Betrayal, confusion, and terror battled within her. How? Why? The questions swirled in her mind, each one amplifying her fear. The video ended, the screen fading to black. But Sarah's image remained burned into Emily's mind, a chilling reminder of her friend's betrayal. The phone slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor. Emily stood frozen, her mind a whirlwind of questions. Why was Sarah doing this? What had she stumbled upon that would make her former friend turn against her? The messages, the threats, the fear, it all seemed so surreal, so impossible. Yet the evidence was right there in her hand, in the chilling video message on her phone. She had to get out, to get help. But who could she trust? The one person she had confided in, the one person she thought she could rely on, had become her worst nightmare. The weight of her isolation pressed down on her, heavier than ever before. She was alone, trapped in a terrifying game orchestrated by someone she thought she knew.